folks that I'm trying to explain this. We had two holes that we were trying to fill when we were building this operating budget. In one hole, we had an operating budget. We're getting an appropriation from the legislature, and the appropriation is X number of dollars. In our case, I believe it was about 10 million. Is it Ricky, about 10 million? And so I have to look at what is the money we're getting from the legislature this legislative session. And I have to try to squeeze all the expenditures into that amount of money, okay? And we're trying to do that. We're trying to live within that 10 million that we got with the fact that we had a reduction in our ING from the legislature, with the fact that we've taken some pretty good size hits in the last 2 years on our enrollment. Our tuition and fee revenue has declined by 1.2 million just in the last couple of years. We had growing infrastructure needs that continue to just, we have facilities that are getting old. We had the grants that were going away, and we needed to maintain those positions, as I mentioned a little earlier. And we're trying to do all that within this whole number one, the money they're going to give us, okay? That's a real challenge, and that's what we really struggled with. That's why I talked about we were looking at repurposing positions to really try to fill the gap where we're losing money from grant funding. And that is what I would characterize as whole number one, okay? We got money in, we got to live within it, despite all these other issues that we have flying at us, okay? In other institutions, other than Northern, they're doing the same thing. They have an amount of money coming in, and they're trying to live within it. But the advantage that they have that we don't have is they have a fund balance. It's kind of like if you watch The Wizard of Oz, what you don't have is a brain, or you don't have is a heart, right? We don't have a fund balance. So in another institution, if they're getting $100 from the legislature, but their expenses are going to be $105, if they have fund balance, they get to lean on it for the extra $5. In our case, we didn't. We had money coming in, we got to live within it. That's hole number one. Hole number two is we started the year with a negative fund balance of $1,860,000, okay? Where other institutions could go, in my example, pull $5 out of their pot of savings or fund balance, we had nothing. We have another hole we have to fill. And the reason we have to fill that hole is I cannot submit an operating budget that is in balance, okay? So we're sitting here with $1 million hole because of the loss of federal funding. When I talk about hole number one, we're sitting here having lost ING. We're sitting here with the potential of losing more enrollment. Big challenge over here with hole number one. In hole number two, we're saying, okay, how do we address that? So in hole number two, what we said is the only way we can make headway on hole number two, and we started planning this very early in the fiscal year, is to cut operating costs. We had, I think, about 20 positions that we froze. We cut expenditures in travel. We cut expenditures in maintenance areas throughout the institution. And we think, based on our estimates, that in the current operating year, we're going to make up about 900,000, maybe close to $1 million, but about 900,000 of that $1,860,000 hole, okay? So, and how do I know that? Well, we look at, again, money in for this current operating year that we got last legislative session. And we look at what our current year operating expenses are. And it's just a simple math problem. What was the negative hole you were in? What's the revenue we're estimating to bring in by June 30th? And what do we think we're going to spend, given all these positions we froze, given all these cuts that we made in travel or operating expenses? And what we're saying is we think that number is going to be about $900,000, hole number two, okay? So again, if I would have had it, in my example, let's say $1 million in fund balance, and we need to have a fund balance as an institution, I would have been saying, okay, I'll lean on that, and my life would have been nice. I could have rolled with the punch on the loss of those grants. but again, I don't have that. So we've got hole number 2. Hole number 2 is what I'm going to be talking to you about in terms of our recommendations, because that's the one that really poses the challenges for us, and why you're going to hear me talking about some of the recommendations that we're making for next year's operating budget. Okay, so I wanted to lay that groundwork.